Okay, this week we are going to look at World War II and basically the world beginning war once again. The ultimate question that we are looking at here overall is what events impacted the development of World War II into a truly world war. So what events created this war into a world war as opposed to just a war between two countries? First, a timeline of events here, just so we have an idea of what is happening when. It was fought between 1939 and 1945, and it began in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. If you remember from last week's podcast, prior to last week's, Hitler actually dressed up an individual, sent him into Germany dressed as a Polish guy, and had him shoot at a German town. At which point Hitler said, hey, now we can declare war on Poland, and that's what he did in 1939. So this set off a chain of events, and the main reason for all of this, however, was Germany just wanting to control more land and become more powerful. So one of the 5 key components we are looking at today is alliances. So who was aligned with whom? First, you have Germany aligned with Italy. In charge was Mussolini, who we know is a fascist, just like the German dictator Hitler, and Japan. They became alliances and formed the Axis powers. So Germany, Italy, and Japan became the Axis powers, while the United States, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union formed the Allied powers. Now, these were very similar alliances as you saw in World War I. However, the difference is Japan has now switched sides and Italy has as well. So in the United States, this picture up here in the front, you have in the middle our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You also have Winston Churchill from Great Britain. And finally, you have Stalin from the Soviet Union. Below, you have obviously Hitler from Germany and Mussolini from Italy. The second component we are looking at is the Sino-Japanese War. Japan invaded China in the mid-1930s and began a war. They were doing the same thing Germany was, they just wanted more land. That was the whole idea behind all the wars here at the start of the 20th century. This made the United States angry with Japan even before the attack on Pearl Harbor. So here you have Japan attacking China for more land, and the United States is upset because they are practicing imperialism, which we tried to prevent. And once again, this was an example of imperialism because they wanted to be more powerful by trying to control more land. And here's a picture of them taking over land. The third component we are looking at is the Holocaust. We spoke about this very briefly this past week with our guest speaker. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis tried to get rid of all the Jewish people in Europe because remember he blamed them for World War I because the Polish, which had a high population of Jewish individuals, surrendered and Hitler was angry. He was also upset because he blamed a Jewish doctor for the death of his mother and for not recovering him quick enough from a gas attack in World War I. So, he was remember that word, anti-Semitism. So he practiced anti-Semitism, which means he believed his race, the Aryan race, if you had blonde hair and blue eyes, was superior than any other. He forced the Jewish people to live in concentration camps, which we heard did not have good conditions at all, and was the reason for 6 million Jewish deaths. So the Holocaust is the third component. A big example, a large example of anti-Semitism. The fourth component is the invasion of Poland, mentioned earlier. World War II began on September 1st, 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. Hitler wanted to control more land and be more powerful, hence imperialism. That is that word we have discussed over several weeks about an individual trying to control and take over more land, to influence another country to be like them. And this was obviously a violation of the Treaty of Versailles, which said you can't practice imperialism, we're trying to get rid of it, you can't build up your military at all. But that's exactly what Hitler decided to do. And Britain and France practiced appeasement which means he gave in to them. They gave in to him. Remember, they gave him Czechoslovakia and Austria. And they allowed him to invade Poland, and they didn't do anything about it until true large amounts of military began to invade and attack other countries. And the fifth component is Pearl Harbor itself. Japan entered World War II on the side of the Nazis this time, as opposed to being on the side with the United States during World War I. And remember, Japanese had this thought process that, hey, we didn't get anything for helping win World War I, so now it's time to get back at it. So the Japanese, again, were taking over China. They believed they had the right to take the land back from China. And they also believed that, they deserved to get any land that they wanted because it was a right from winning World War I. So on December 7th, however, 1941, Japan attacked the U.S. military base at Pearl Harbor, and they planned to destroy the U.S. Navy. But that did not do so at all. They did not achieve their goal. And the next day, the United States entered into World War II by declaring war on Japan. So the whole point of Pearl Harbor's attack was to destroy the United States Navy, so we really couldn't do anything to help with the war as far as a naval attack goes, but that was not it at all. That was not the case. And just overlooking this again, key battles here to look at: the Battle of Stalingrad, and that lasted for 7 months between the Soviet Union and Germany. An extremely bloody battle. We're going to get into that later next week. During the Battle of Stalingrad, Germany was weakened, and this allowed the Allies to gain advantage, and it was the turning point of the war here. Germany weakened so much that the Allies could actually come in, especially with the help of the United States, and do a lot of damage. D-Day was a large event with the Allies when they landed on Normandy, marking the beginning of Operation Overlord, and that was the plan to fight German forces in Europe. The Americans played a huge factor in D-Day, and we will get into more detail with this specifically in the following week. And then finally, the Battle of Iwo Jima, which was fought on the Japanese island, and this was where some of the worst fighting in the war happened. You had 20,000 Americans die here, and almost the entire Japanese military that was stationed there to fight this battle. And it is especially famous for the American soldiers raising a flag during the battle. And if you ever visit DC, you can actually see a statue of such. So once again, looking at the ultimate question here, what events impacted the development of World War II into a truly world war? You have the first, alliances. The second, the Sino-Japanese War. The third, the Holocaust. The fourth, an invasion of Poland. And the fifth, Pearl Harbor. These 5 events shaped into the world war that it was by the acts of imperialism, anti-Semitism, and trying to stop further destruction across Europe and practicing of expanding your own country. A bonus question to end here. In several sentences, explain why you think America once again practiced neutrality before entering into World War II, despite all that was occurring in Europe. It began in 1939, but as noted with the attack on Pearl Harbor, we didn't enter until 1941. So why do you think, once again, we practiced neutrality just like we did in World War I, despite all that was happening in Europe? All right, if you have any questions, please let me know. And that ends the podcast.